Oh, good. I'm ready.
Rock star yesterday. How many thousands of people were probably watching that?
How was that? It went up quite quick. That's good. I'm glad we got that.
Okay. I think we're all here, right? So, and I know this is weird, but appreciate everybody's flexibility. We look a little different tonight, but we do have some important business to do, and just appreciate your time. So it is 5:30 p.m., and I now call to order the Grand Island Public Schools Board of Education meeting. This is the March 16th, 2020 meeting. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the Grand Island Independent, which is the district's designated method of giving notice of these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meetings Act are available at the entrance to the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it in to us now so that you may be recognized during the public forum part of our meeting. And these forms are also located by the entry doors of this room. Mrs. Sewer, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Hinkle.
Present.
Dr. Brose.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Present.
Ms. Wolf. Present. Mr. Barsanis.
Yes.
Mrs. Inc. Present. Mrs. Albers. Here. Mrs. Schutz. Here. Mrs. Gordemaker let us know in advance that she would not be able to attend.
All right, thank you. As always, we start with our mission statement. Mrs. Schutz, would you please read that for us?
Every student, every day, a success. In educating students, we teach hearts as well as minds. Student commitments. Within the school district of Grand Island, every student will be taught to read, write, and communicate effectively, solve problems, acquire and apply knowledge, and demonstrate mastery through performance to the best of the student's abilities. Every student will be treated with fairness and dignity. Every student will be honored for their unique qualities and backgrounds. Every student will experience a sense of belonging, contribution, and success, and every student will develop responsibility and show respect for others as well as oneself.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is a public forum, and I don't think that there's anybody here. All right, thank you. So then we move on to number 5, which is the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have 5.1 minutes from the previous month's meeting, 5.2 claims as submitted, 5.3 bid proposals as submitted, 5.4 staff adjustments as submitted, 5.5 treasurer's report as submitted, 5.6 policies, which include 6.1, which is 6252 professional boundaries between staff and students on final read, 5.6.2, 8453 student suspension, expulsion, and mandatory reassignment on final read, 5.6.3, 8555 suicide awareness final read, 8610 student leadership councils on final read, 8670 student publications on final read, 8560 student automobile use on first read, 8620 contest for students first read, and 8630 student volunteers and aides first read. 5.7 is the grant report update, 5.8 is the surplus property listing, 9 is change orders as documented, 10 is bills as submitted, and 11 is approval of agenda as submitted. This is a consent agenda as published. Oh, just a minute. Whoa, I got a little crazy there. Would anyone like to remove any items or add any items to the consent agenda? Or does anyone have a potential conflict of interest on agenda item 5.2? If so, please state the check number that you're abstaining from voting on. Ms. Wolf.
Check number 70794, check number 70820, check number 71178, check number 7762, check number 71027.
Mrs. Inc.
Check number 7791 and check number 70820.
Mrs. Albers.
Check number 70710, 70789, and 70820.
And Mrs. Schutz.
70793, 70820, and 71052.
And I will be abstaining from check number 7117. Do you have, Dr. Brose?
I'll be abstaining from check number 70790, check number 70820, and check number 70711.
Mrs. Alberts, did you have something else, or did you just leave your light on? Okay. So could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Did you say so moved, Ms. Wolf? So moved. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that's what I heard you say. Do I have a second? Second, Dr. Bros. Please vote. Where you originally used to sit.
Lisa's on no.
There we go.
There we go. Motion passes.
That's the most difficult thing we have to do tonight, I promise now. All right, so now we will move to agenda, the information items, and the first one up is 6.1, the COVID-19 information. I believe Mr. Harden is going to share some information with us.
Well, good evening, and thanks for being brave and being in a room with more than 10 people, because that is now the recommendation from the White House. So we, of course, didn't know that, and so we've taken all appropriate actions, and this is part of. So this agenda item comes on the advice of our school attorney, Rex Schultze, and it does indeed is for your discussion, consideration, and to take all necessary action with regard to emergency circumstances presented to us as an organization due to the COVID-19 virus. So every one of these items are just listed here. They're also then on the information section of the board separately. So items 7.1 through 7.4 would be the corresponding items. So the first item, all of these are authorization language. As you know, statute in Nebraska is such that we only have the authority as an organization to act based on statute, and also then the superintendent. So every one of these starts off with the phrase, authorize the superintendent of schools or designee. So the first item revolves around granting paid leave of absence to staff who are specifically dealing with actually having the COVID-19 virus and their ability to be absent from work and being paid and receive benefits separate and distinct over any other leave that they would have already as part of their employment contract with Grand Island Public Schools. Again, this is information. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you have. My esteemed colleagues are in the room, so if there's something I can't answer, certainly they will. So I'm just going to go through these, and then we'll kind of go from there. So the item 2 is, again, authorize the superintendent or designee to take all necessary actions to work with state and local health department officials for anything involving large group gatherings. And so as I mentioned in my opening comments, that's now down to 10. It's considered a large group. And so that's why that motion is necessary, or that action item would be necessary later on. The third item then is to authorize the superintendent of schools or designee to take all necessary actions to work with and declare the state of emergency with the COVID-19 along with our county. We don't have the authority to declare a state of emergency. The Hall County Board of Supervisors would have to declare that. I have already, on behalf of the board, sent an email to Mr. Roseland. He's also already responded, so this is literally hot off the email. And he is willing to present that to Hall County Board of Supervisors for their consideration to declare a state of emergency in Hall County due to the COVID-19 virus. Once they do that, we will probably need to have a special meeting to then pass an actual resolution to take advantage of these statutes that are specifically mentioned in this item. We already have draft resolution language ready from our attorney. Right now, this is again just authorizing Dr. Grover or her designee to take these actions on your behalf. The fourth and final item on this then is to authorize the superintendent or designee to basically deal with closing of attendance centers, alternative education, and continuing employment of all staff. Again, these are all on the recommendation of our school attorney and necessary appropriate given the unique circumstances that we face. So with that, I can conclude my comments.
I know when we get to the part later, as far as making the motion, we list specific countries. Can we leave that more open-ended in case others get added to the list, or will it require another vote if new things get added?
That is a great question, and those are certainly listed as recommended motions. I think because the situation is so fluid, you might consider a more broad language and say something as identified by the CDC would be a phraseology that I think would empower us to avoid having to go back and redo or missing something. And quite honestly, it would be at any point in time kind of thing. So that changes quite literally by the minute. They update their website daily at noon is what we're understanding from the prior day information.
Okay. Ms. Wolf, you had a question?
Not so much as a question, just to make sure that it's clarified in regards to payment for certified, non-certified, and extracurricular staff, such as, paras or our coaches or anything like that. I just want to make sure that that's clarified, that that's understood, that they will be paid.
Yeah, they, again, this empowering language is really concerning people that are actually identified with having the virus and fighting that situation, separate and distinct from our ability to pay those staff members because we're closed. And so two different distinct things. And so it's kind of important to keep that separate. We believe, the attorneys believe, we have the power to make those determinations at this point for people that are needing to be paid because we're closed versus needing to be paid because they actually have the virus.
Right, no, I just was a question with the live, Facebook Live with NSEA. It came up a lot last night.
And that's what I was going to mention. So there is a state statute that says, and it came about because of 1918, because of that pandemic, that says that we do have to pay. So that's why it's not necessary to do the resolution that they talk about, because it's already a state statute. And we will comply with that, of course.
Exactly.
All right, so it doesn't look like there's any more questions. I just wanted to take this time to do some thanks and praise. I know it has been a very, very difficult time for Dr. Grover and all the administrators and all the staff. Closing schools is never an easy decision, even if it is for just one snow day, because there is so much else to think about, which people just don't even begin to imagine, because they think about just their world, just their children, and what they need, and they don't understand that there are so many different scenarios to think about. And so I know that they have been putting in a ton of hours all through the weekend. Even one of the PR people is working from home because of self-quarantine, but still very, very dedicated. And I saw last night when we canceled school that some of the teachers tweeted out about how conflicted they were, because they know it's the right thing, but they're going to miss their children, and they're already sad about that. So I think, if anything else, you can know that the staff, the school cares about these kids. And when and we're going to hear about this more, but everything they have to think about, from the food to the children who need mental health services that they get at school, to the just helping families in our society who can't maybe understand all the information that's coming out because maybe their English fluency isn't that good. And thank you, Mr. Barsonis, for all you've done to help us communicate. We really appreciate that. But there's just so many things to think about, and this is a time that we're really going to need the community to step up, because I know there's going to be a lot of daycare issues, but that's really something that the community needs to help us out on and take the lead. I was, watching New York City make the decision whether or not to close, because they didn't decide until yesterday either. And their big thing is that their health professionals had said, don't close, because we need to be able to get to work, and if we don't have kids can't go to school, we have no daycare. So they had to work through that issue before they were able to close their schools. So I just want everybody to know, we're at a point where we need to overreact and not underreact or react too late. And so that's why the decision that was made was a very good decision, and we definitely support it. And I would like the board members to stand up and give the administrators a round of applause. And thank you very, very much. And that's not near enough. Boy, I can't imagine what it's going to be to look back. And then the other thing I would say is to our seniors, I'm sorry. You don't deserve it. And I hope that we can get creative and find a way to make it as special for the class of 2020. All right. So 6.2, the CKLA adoption. And are Mrs. Gannon and Mrs. Bills here to talk about that? There's a delay from where they're listening, so they're... Okay. So any other thoughts, comments? Mr. Barsney.
You know, before we did our Board 101, a couple days before, I received an email from somebody in the community asking two questions. How much time does it take to be in the board? And the second question was, do you feel appreciated as a board member? And I've got to say this, I've never been more proud to be a board member in the Grand Island Public Schools with all our staff, with all our teachers, administrators. Everything that you do is just amazing. And this is, I mean, first time we're dealing with something like this, right? We don't know. And so thank you for your leadership. I was joking with my dad that when we went on the radio on Saturday and we said, you know, we're going to keep school closed, I got the messages support him, and they're saying, well, why would you stay open? Then we made the announcement on Sunday, and I got the, why would you close?
Yeah.
But making those decisions is not easy. For all the teachers, all the staff, please just know that we appreciate you so much. And this is a great time to be purple, so thank you.
All right, Mrs. Bills.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about this information item tonight. So I'm going to share with you information related to a pilot that we did this year with Core Knowledge Language Arts in kindergarten and first grade. So why look at this? Why consider this? Current reading research indicates that 95% of students are cognitively capable of being able to read on grade level at the end of first grade. 75% of students who aren't reading at grade level by the end of third grade will continue to be poor readers as they progress through school. And our pilot data that we collected do indicate that this is a need for us. So just to talk to you a little bit about our process, way back last November 2018, a small group of us went to a materials adaptation project held by Nebraska Department of Education for schools that had adopted Wonders and Journeys. It was at that project that we learned about the particular strengths and limitations of our current resource, and we began investigating ideas for how we could elevate that resource. And Core Knowledge Language Arts, the skill strand, was one of the things that we began investigating. So last year we did actually have 2 schools in kindergarten who picked up a pilot mid-year. And after getting their feedback, they said, we'd really like to start a year off with it and see it through a whole year. So we did pilot this year in 5 schools, K1. They received 2 days of professional development provided from Amplify for free. In November, we sent out some assessments that all students participated in, K1. In December, we had a selection team come together. At that point in time, we developed our vision for Grand Island Public Schools for our students, and just kind of all got on the same page. And we reviewed our November data. In January, we calibrated around a materials rubric. For those of you who don't know, Ed Reports, puts out some nice reports related to instructional materials. They do not evaluate the quality with which those materials teach foundational literacy skills well. And so it was really important for us to have a materials rubric that was sensitive to those particular skills. In February, sent out another assessment for all students to participate in, collected and analyzed that data. And then in March, our team got together, analyzed all of the data that we collected and made a selection. I did want to elicit feedback from our K-1 teachers who are participating in the letters professional development and implementing CKLA. There are strong ties and connections between that professional learning and the manner with which this program lays out instruction. And so I asked teachers to share their experiences, and overwhelmingly teachers said that this was a really powerful experience for them this year. Letters was telling them how to best teach these critical skills, and CKLA gave them the resources in order to do that and do it well. Teachers said that this year they feel much more confident in teaching reading and writing, and have heard, just numbers of stories of students who really love reading. They look forward to that time of day. They can't wait to pick up their books. They can't wait to read more. They want to read on. And so we're really instilling that love of reading in them, and that's just wonderful to hear. So why we selected CKLA, one is rigor. There are high expectations for students, and our students are meeting those expectations. Alignment, there's a strong alignment with the science of teaching reading. Elements of effective instruction to support all learners. The sequence, so it really propels kids as learners by teaching them the most common spellings for sounds first, and then introducing the less common, more complex spellings later on. And again, our data is looking really good. So I'm going to share a little bit of our data with you. This is a normed reference assessment that our kindergarten students took. Basically, green and blue is really, really good. Okay, red is students are demonstrating that they're well below expectations. This keeps going in and out. So for correct letter sounds, this would be students were given a nonsense word like riff or mib, and they had to tell all the sounds in the word. Our pilot schools and our self-initiated schools had anywhere from 73% to 77% of their students meeting that expectation. What's really impressive to me are the numbers of students that are exceeding or that are in the blue category. I mean, we have 40 and 54%, which is really amazing compared to our non-pilot schools. And just for your reference, the non-pilot schools are Shoemaker, Stolly, Kneale, and Gates. So just to give you some perspective around how our students are performing in comparison to students in those non-pilot schools. This is whole words read data, and so it's the same measure, but students have to be able to say the word. So not just say the sounds are b, but they say mib. Again, the data is really overwhelming. Our pilot schools were close to 80% of our students meeting those benchmarks compared to our non-pilot schools. Another exciting data piece is that our district, our kindergarten students grew as well as or better than 91% of schools or districts that are like us from fall to winter in the map, which is really impressive. In first grade, within CKLA, students take a pretest at the very beginning of the year. And we talked to teachers about the power of high-quality universal instruction, and we wanted them to have the opportunity to just see how powerful that core instruction can be. So at the end of that unit, I asked the teachers to give a post-test. So within that period of time is 22 days of instruction. You can see here the green is the beginning of the unit, the blue is the end of the unit. The reductions in students who had questionable skills at the end of the unit, and the increase in students who had outstanding skills. So I went ahead and disaggregated it just to see actual student numbers. So the number of students who increased and had outstanding skills were 19. Those with questionable skills were reduced by 70 students. Outstanding skills was 49 students. So some really impressive numbers in just 22 short days of instruction. Another kind of interesting data point is that our pilot schools demonstrated growth, more growth this fall to winter than last year, and our non-pilot schools actually either remained the same or they decreased in their growth in comparison to last year. So I am currently negotiating with Amplify. This pilot, or this adoption would be for grades K2. It would be full classroom sets, and would not be a recurring or ongoing cost for us. It would really just be about wear and tear, because every student gets a book and they're gonna love those books and we'll have to replace them every now and then, but it'd be $234,495 allocated out of our budget for resource adoption. And I hope that you will support us in our vision of every student, every day a reader. Do you have any questions?
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Mrs. Inc.
Okay, so first of all, will this be for everyone? It's not optional?
It will be for everyone. It will not be optional.
And will letters goes hand in hand with it?
It does. It
So
does.
then will all staff do letters?
Yep. So what we have, the plan for next year for K2, because we're looking at this adoption, pending your approval. Our plan for professional development next year for district days and CIA days would be that their professional development ties directly to letters and their resource. And so we want to be really strategic in what they're going to encounter and how we can best support them through that professional learning. Letters is still voluntary, it is still optional. I just opened it up to second and third grade teachers a week ago. I already have over half of the slots filled in just a week, which is really awesome. I just need to send out a reminder that they need to sign up, because I'll open it up to K1 teachers again that didn't take it this year. We are working on creating a professional growth goal, making that a component of professional growth for our incoming teachers. That's something that I have been working with Wayne on. So eventually that will be a part of kind of just how we do things here.
That's good. Dr. Bros.
Just a question about making sure that all of our third graders are reading at or above grade level. This is designed to help bolster that, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay.
I will tell you, sorry, to your point, when our team first met and we started looking at the data and designing our vision, they were shocked to see that 95% of students should be reading. And I had one teacher say, after seeing this data, I know that that's possible. I know that we can do that. That goal is attainable. And so I think they're really feeling empowered right now.
That's awesome. All right. Did you have another question, or you're done? Okay. No, that's okay. I just want to make sure. All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And so the message to the kids when they're at home now, read,
Read.
right? And if you need a book, let us know. All right. 6.3 is the middle school math adoption. Mrs. Beeman.
So in addition to read, do some counting, measurement.
Yeah.
I think I disconnected something here. Mrs. Hinkle, Dr. Grover, and School Board, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come present on the suggested proposal for our new resource for middle school. There we go. Okay. Why do we need new resources? Well, a few years ago, we conducted a curriculum audit, and we found that our resources were lacking in the development of conceptual understanding and rigorous tasks. And recently, as Brittany said, we have partnered with the Nebraska Department of Education, and we have found that there is a very high positive impact when teachers use high-quality instructional materials. So with the purchase of these materials, our middle school math teachers will be empowered to craft their delivery of the material to best meet the needs of their students. Our process, each middle school participated in the pilot process. Teachers were provided with initial and continued training of these resources. And then in November, NDE began hosting a fellowship in which we applied for and participated in, as Brittany said, and this greatly helped us with considerations as we were beginning the process of choosing these materials. We have monthly CIA meetings, and so at every middle school math CIA meeting, we brought student work, we brought tasks, we brought lesson plans, so we could compare and contrast those at our meetings. We collected various data. It was a little tricky because each of the math resources taught concepts in a different order. So when we started designing an assessment, we found that some resources had taught certain things and some hadn't. So it was kind of hard to find common concepts to test. But we did do that, and then we met at CIA and compared those. And then our task force met, and we have 2 teachers from each middle school, and they reviewed all of the data that we collected along with teacher feedback. Every teacher provided us feedback on with a rubric that we designed with all of the different indicators for quality resources, and they made their final decision. And we chose, if you remember from last year when I was here, we adopted Origo for grades K through 5. And so 6th grade will be using Origo because it does go through 6th grade. And then 7th and 8th grade will be using CPM. The teachers felt like that transition from 5th to 6th grade would be maybe easier for 6th graders if at least one thing was common that they had in elementary. And so, and they really liked the Origo. The rigor, the expectations in both of these resources is very high, and teachers have found that our students are capable. The alignment, each of these resources focuses on the major content of the grade through spaced learning and practice. It's interesting that both of these resources use the same type of teaching pedagogy. So, and they're not related in any way, but it was interesting that they both rose to the top. So the elements of effective instruction that support all learners, we really appreciated the continued support and professional development that we received from these 2 resources. Consultants came out that were former teachers, and they worked with our teachers. And then I spoke of the sequence for 6th grade, the connections made from elementary to middle school. Some comments from teachers about CPM. They talked about the deep understanding of the mathematical concepts. There's definitely a teaming aspect, which our district is using as one of their priorities. The higher level students were being challenged as well as pushing the lower students to gain understanding. Students were actively participating in their learning, and it was very student-centered. I was told to go fast, so I'm going pretty fast. Some comments about Origo. You can see here a teacher that was studied lots of different curriculums, said that she was impressed with the differentiation for both high and low levels and the discourse and activities that gave students an opportunity to discuss their learning. And what's most important is the students' thoughts about Origo. Here's a couple of quotes. "It makes more sense than the regular math stuff, like it just makes ratios easier for me. It's easier if you need help with multiplication and helps to see number lines for things like inequalities." Negotiations are taking place with both vendors at this time and will not exceed $259,000, which is allocated in the L4L budget for the adoption. Every student, every day a success. What questions do you have?
Dr. Bros.
I have a question about vocabulary.
Yes.
From 6th to the 7th grade program. Is that vocabulary pretty consistent so that we're not having to reteach what that means?
Yes, that's a good question. A lot of the vocabulary is mathematical vocabulary, which doesn't change. There might be some instances where vocabulary is a bit different for strategies. Like some strategies are called They use a model called the bar diagram. Some call them a strip model. So that would be the only differences in some of those strategy models.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. All right, so then the next one is 6.4, which is the social studies standards adoption. Mrs. Bills is back.
I'm back. You almost got to see me 3 times tonight. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present this information item to you. This is related to our board policy 7310, their new social studies standards. Want to provide some historical perspective for you. The previous standards were adopted in 2012. Our K-5 grade levels had resource adoptions that took place in 2014, aligned to those standards, and middle school and high school had a resource adoption in 2016. For the most part, there's some variability within there. The process that we went through for revision, the state really prides itself on using a geographically diverse group of Nebraska educators in their revision process. Myself, Jason Weaver, and Tracy Jacobowski all applied to be on the committee and served on that committee. I apologize. The revisions, the revisions took place beginning in the fall of 2018 through the summer of 2019. We had very few face-to-face days. We spent a lot of time outside of our regular contracted day via Zoom meetings, meeting in content groups and making revisions and looking at public feedback. And so if you do ever get the opportunity to see Tracy and Jason, be sure to thank them for their commitment and their time to this work, because it did take a great deal of our time outside of our normal contracted day. And the final draft, as you know, was approved by the State Board of Education in November. So how do the new standards differ from the previous standards? The new standards are much more focused. They provide the opportunity for us to go a little bit deeper versus spending a lot of time learning about a lot of different content. There was specific attention to ensuring that the standards met that students would be college, career, and civic ready. And we also wanted to make sure that they required students to really think from multiple perspectives and think like a historian. Another big change is the K-8 standards are now grade level standards. Our middle school standards used to be banded, and they are not anymore. There was a lot of data that was collected around student mobility that informed that decision. They found out that students were learning all different types of things at different grade levels within the state, and we really felt like from an equity standpoint, we needed to have grade-specific standards through grade 8. And then there was a really intentional integration of policy and law into the standards to make sure that we were meeting some of those requirements as well. Major themes, as I've talked with you about already, civic readiness, so making sure that students understand the fundamentals of each of those: civics, economy, geography, and history, encouraging participation in their community, and develop actions and dispositions that are necessary for them to be civic ready. College ready, we wanted to make sure that the standards were rigorous, and if students exited high school, they would be ready and be successful in a post-secondary institution without needing any sort of remediation. Another big shift is inquiry. We really wanted students to do deep critical thinking as a part of the standards. The standards, we made sure that they were aligned to all of the policies and laws that are related to social studies curriculum and content, and so made sure to go through all of those with a fine-tooth comb. And our current plan for implementation would be coming back for approval to adopt the standards in April, and then have outlined summer work for our task force to get together and prioritize standards and unwrap them for clarity. So we're really clear on what the standards are calling for, what they want students to know and be able to do, and then begin exploring some resources that will best meet the intention of those standards. We would look at elementary next year, secondary the following year with full implementation of the standards in 2022 and 2023. That is in line with the timeline that NDE has provided. What questions do you have?
Dr. Bros.
Again, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
Where did grades 6, 7, and 8 land? Are they elementary or are they middle? I'm sorry, secondary.
So the standards are still secondary standards. The biggest change really has to do with the content that they're teaching. So right now, our 7th and 8th graders both spend time in American history. 6th and 7th grade will be more of like a world history type of course, with 8th grade being American history. We will have to do a really good job of making sure that our 5th graders are getting adequate American history content. So the idea is that American history lives in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade. You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to 6.5, which is the Memorial Stadium naming rights. Mrs. Scoreboard is here to share with us. Yes.
Okay. Naming rights. So we have 4 naming rights here on the table. These represent an additional gift that Mr. Lanny Martin gave to the stadium project. You remember his $10 million gift to name the stadium, or name the field, the Jack Martin Field, after his late father. These naming rights are an additional gift that gave us the opportunity to do the addition, the expanded project for the stadium. And so on the east side, and they were a total of $1.326 million, and so qualified for naming rights. So what we have here is, I'm just going to go through them real quick. For the visitor east locker room, the name would be Diane 61 and Dave Barker locker room. These, by the way, are Lanny's siblings, Diane Barker. For the interior press box, there are 2 sides of that box. So inside that box, on one side, would be called the Carol 55 and Bob Noah score box, and the Les 49 and Vera Martin media box. And I'm saying the years they graduated. Very important to this family. So both Carol and Les are deceased, and Vera is as well. The boys soccer locker room in West Stadium, the name for that is proposed to be the Tom 1969 and Kathy 1969 Martin locker room, and both of them graduated from Grand Island Senior High. And then our girls soccer locker room on the West Stadium is proposed to be the Janet 70 and Dale Benson locker room. Are there any questions regarding these naming rights?
Mrs. Zink?
Hi. Are there any other naming right opportunities available, or does this finish them off? Can't remember.
So we have one left of the proposed naming rights, the coaches' boxes. And there has been, maybe some interest in opening maybe one more. And I can think of one more, possibly, but we'd have to bring it through. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. Hopefully we have to.
Exactly, yes. Any other questions? Well, once again, thank you to Lanny Martin. It's awesome how invested he is in this. That's an understatement, I think. So now you want to move to 6.6, the Veterans Memorial Wall Project, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Get this in here. This way. Okay. So, we have talked a lot about what this stadium means and why it was built, and really kind of where we are in terms of honoring our veterans. And it is a memorial stadium, and so we propose to do an honor wall underneath East Stadium. And you're seeing a little bit of a rendering here. The middle of the honor wall has a touch screen that will have all of the names of Hall County's fallen, who have fallen in wars. And it'll be kind of like the Academic Hall of Fame and such, where you can touch on the name and then an image, if we can find it, and a little bit about that person comes up. There is a static display as well. Again, very similar to our other Hall of Fame walls, where we will have listed all of the soldiers who fought and died, who are from Hall County. But defining Hall County has been probably the hardest thing. And so since this is something that we feel very strongly about, and we want to be as inclusive as possible, we felt like we better get the parameters in front of you of how we're defining Hall County, because it's an all-time thing, right? And we're committed to keeping up with that wall. There's room, unfortunately, there will be room for more, especially in the digital piece of it, but even in the static display, it's designed to be able to put more in. So here are the criteria that we have come up with. And the veteran, or the person who, it's a Gold Star, a soldier who has passed in a battle or passed during a conflict. So that's the first criteria. But we've come up with different criteria, and they only have to meet one besides died in a conflict. So these criteria are whether they were listed on the original plaque on East Stadium, and that was put up in 1955. There are World War I and World War II veterans, Gold Star soldiers who passed in the war, who are not on that plaque. And the reason being is they were MIA still in 55. And so we found them, and we want to give them their due. We want to keep that plaque on the front of the stadium intact, because we feel like it's historical. And so anyway, on the inside. So if they're listed on the plaque, or if they're listed in the National Archives from Hall County, if they enlisted from Hall County, Nebraska, if they have served with the Grand Island National Guard unit, if their county of residence was Hall County, if they attended a Hall County high school, if their place of birth was Hall County, Nebraska, or if their final resting place was Hall County, Nebraska, one of those things has to be true. Okay, so that's what we're proposing as the criteria. Just a little bit that we're finding about these soldiers who have passed. It's incredible. My staff has been researching these people. And just to give you an idea, Hall County paid a very heavy price in World War II, a very heavy price. I can't remember the total. I think, I do have it. 121 121 from World War II passed, and they were from Hall County. And one of the things that we think about when we were thinking about this stadium is 94 kids, right, were killed in 1944 and 1945 in about 20 months. And if you can imagine that sustained assault on the citizens of Hall County, of course, the memorial is going to be a stadium. And so that kind of just gives us that, oh, right, this is right, we're doing the right thing. We want to honor these folks and also just people coming forward. We've paid a pretty big price, and we want to make sure that we're honoring that, and we're giving students and the community an opportunity to see those stories, because some of them haven't been told. One of the things that as we're uncovering stories, we decided that we would do a series of stories in the Independent about some of these boys that we've found. And our original plan was to run them in April. I think maybe our plan will change. We'll still do it, but it may be something that we look at doing at another time due to our current state of affairs and the COVID-19. So it's kind of taking away some of our thunder, and I feel like, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it, and it makes sense to do it. And so anyway, it's an amazing thing to work on. My staff are very honored to work on it. Do you have questions about the criteria or the wall? Anything I can answer on that?
Mr. Brown, do you want to share anything from the Finance and Facility Committee? We saw it there. Any thoughts? No. I think we were fine with the criteria, and asked Lee Lillibridge is there, and we asked her a lot of questions, and
Okay, good.
we know you guys are doing a really good job on that, so
Well, thank you. We have a pretty amazing staff. We're very passionate.
Well, good. Cool. Do you have more then, or do you want to move on to the next
I can
agenda?
move on to the next.
Okay, so 6.7 is the GIPS Foundation 2020 Staff and Board Campaign.
Okay, I'm gonna run this, if I can.
I give because I see that money going into action all over my school, from before and after school activities with weightlifting and fishing club, into media club, which we see in morning announcements every morning, and into people's classrooms. So it's fun for me to see my money go right back into the kids that I care about.
I give because I can't think of a better investment than the youth of our community. If we want to give back to the community, the youth are our future.
I give to support the kids. I like the way the foundation branches out and is able to support kids in different ways.
I give because I've seen it really make a big difference with some of our students over the years. A lot of my students have received scholarships, and it's really helped them, kick off the beginning of their educational career down the road. And actually, my own family has benefited from those scholarships as well. It helped us out. Well, I know that, the foundation has helped out students who, maybe need a little help getting some equipment and stuff to participate in some activities. And, that's really a neat thing, because their opportunity isn't, they still have the opportunity, and they might have been afraid to step out and give something a try if they weren't going to be able to afford it.
6 or 7 years ago, we started an intervention program at the high school, a math intervention program, and we did obtain a mini grant to help with resources for that intervention program, which was very, very helpful in reaching those kids that were struggling a little bit with math.
I just think that if you care about students and you want to give back to them, the foundation is a great way to give back to them because 100% of your giving goes straight back to those students.
The active giving, I've seen a lot of my colleagues, really do a good job of giving, and it kind of, it's something that catches on with everybody and spreads, and it's just kind of neat to be able to do that.
The giving and seeing it go to kids that I know and go to things that I care about, it was never a question of if I should give, it was how much can I give.
So that was last year's video, and we were getting ready to push our campaign out the door. We're still going to do it. We're still going to do our campaign, but it's going to look a little different, and we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like. At this point, we may be looking at very virtual campaign. We are very grateful that our staff are being paid, first and foremost. Sorry. Our board mailing was getting ready to go out. We're still looking at that. So you will get something from us. We will likely encourage you to give during Go Big Give. And that may be a platform that we're going to piggyback on this year. We just haven't made a lot of decisions yet. I would like to share with you, though, that Orv Qualset, in memory of his wife, Mary, has given the $5,000 challenge gift for our campaign. Our co-chairs this year are Amy Schley from Gates, Jason Zelazny from Jefferson, Zach Hawkins, Westridge Middle School, Katie Kiesling from Barr, Lori Peterson from Walnut, Alan Heyman, and Tracy Jacobowski from the Academies of Grand Island Senior High. So we had a pretty awesome crew ready to go, and I do feel like they'll still be awesome, and we're still going to be able to do this campaign. The foundation staff campaign is about 30% of our unrestricted income for the year, and certainly we fund unrestricted things such as the classroom grants and some scholarships and the like. And so just to be aware that, we're so grateful for all the support that Grand Island Public Schools gives us. We're gonna push forward somehow. We're figuring it out. We're also figuring out how to distribute scholarships virtually. And so lots of interesting things this year. You might be invited to some fun Zoom meetings. We are going to do it for our class of 2020. Obviously, we've got money to give away, and we're going to do it. So there certainly will be some things that we cancel, but some things we feel aren't negotiable. When it's okay to do them, we'll do them. So that's kind of where we're at. We hope that you will give when you're called upon to do so, and we appreciate your support.
Sure. Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? Thank you for being here tonight. All right. We'll move on to 6.8, which is the lease agreement with Trago Dugan Aviation. Mr. Phillips, welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to come. This has been a long time in the making. I look back through emails, and we started this process over 7 months ago. But with anything, good things come to those who wait. Now we have a pandemic that keeps us from it even farther. But what we have in front of you is actually the easiest part of this whole process. This is the rental agreement with Trigo Dugan for the use of their airplane to get our students up. For the sophomore experiences, students will go up in a short ride, a 10 to 15 minute ride, just to get them up in a plane, get them that experience. And then the juniors and seniors would be available then to take private pilots lessons throughout the use of this plane. Our instructor, TJ Norris, has gone through all the training with Trigo Dugan and all the certification, passed all of those hurdles that he needed to be authorized as a user of that plane. He on the side has already been providing some flight instruction outside of school hours, so that's well versed. The last 7 months has been going through the insurance process to get this approved, and as we found, there's lots of schools across the nation that are flying with kids, but none of them are doing it during the school day, which we intend to. So I want to thank Mr. Harden for all his work and working through ALICAP and their guidance to get those pieces in place. We now have the insurance in place for the students to build the plane, and we have the insurance in place for the students to fly in the plane. So this is the final piece. Just the authorization to proceed with the rental of that aircraft. And as soon as we get back to school, we can get kids up. Again, the criteria is outlined very clearly as far as the conditions for flight. And again, TJ has gone through that process and training to know when they could get up. So with that, I would open to any questions.
Mrs. Schutz.
How many people fit in this plane at one time?
It's a 4-seater.
4-seater.
So the students, the sophomore experience, they'll take them up 3 students at a time for that. For the individual flight lessons, it'll be 1-to-1 with TJ.
Any other questions or comments? Well, it sounds like an awesome opportunity, so hopefully we get back to it soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 6.9 is the 2020-2021 staffing plan. Mr. Stelk.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present our recommendation for our staffing plan for the 2020-2021 school year. You know, it's almost therapeutic to be able to think about, planning for next year and to be looking towards the future, and maybe, just a little bit of a break from looking at the current situation, and that can kind of sometimes feel a little bit doom and gloom. So it's exciting to look towards the future. So you should have at your places the executive summary. My slides will follow in order with the executive summary, so you're welcome to either look at the slides or certainly follow along with the executive summary. So, first and foremost, I want to make sure and stress that as we look at staffing requests for the upcoming year, we do align those requests in that prioritization process with the strategic plan, and specifically objectives 1 and 3 would certainly support this staffing recommendation. Every year there are unique circumstances that kind of impact some of our decision making and have a real important part of our decision making process. This year, of course, we are in I'll say kind of the middle of our staffing study with DMG, and we do not have the results of that back yet, of course. So as we looked at the various staffing requests that were submitted from administrators, we certainly wanted to take somewhat of a conservative approach to any significant recommendations, because we certainly want to be able to see what DMG comes to us with towards the end of this year and be able to consider any of their recommendations and how they may impact either next year or future years. So the staffing recommendations that we are bringing to you tonight are really those that we felt needed to have some attention without the benefit of having the DMG staffing study. And then of course you'll see that there are some staffing requests in here that will support the continued rollout of the academies at Grand Island Senior High. It's always, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that it's really almost like a tug of war sometimes when we look at all the needs that we have, and every year our needs exceed our ability to fund our requests, and it's much more well thought out than just two people pulling on the end of a rope like a tug of war. But certainly we have spirited conversations, we have a lot of give and take, we have a lot of viewpoints that go into consideration as we put this staffing plan together. So I'll just go ahead and start here. The Early Learning Center has written a grant, Early Childhood Expansion Grant, and upon approval of that, they would need to have 2 certified staff, and then to support those teachers, there would be 2 bilingual paras and 2 sped paras. Obviously, if that expansion grant is not approved, we would not move forward with these staff. At the elementary level, we do have a request in here for an EL para at Gates Elementary School. Gates Elementary School has had a need for an EL para for several years now. We've been fortunate that we've had some bilingual staff at Gates that were able to fulfill some of those needs. And while we were able to leverage their unique skills, it does sometimes pull them away from some of their other teaching responsibilities. And we feel that it's time now for us to give Gates that EL para to assist with those non-first language learner students. At the certified portion then for elementary, one of our recommendations is to kind of restructure the assistant principal at Engelman Elementary School. Right now, the Engelman Elementary School principal is half-time assistant principal and then half-time EL teacher. And her responsibilities as a half-time EL teacher, of course, require that she be in the classroom with students for those half days. So it really limits her flexibility and her responsiveness because, the job of administration in an elementary school cannot be corralled into just, a half of a day. And this position, if approved as the MTSS coordinator, is similar to what we have at Dodge, where it's considered an interventionist position, but there's much more flexibility in how those duties are performed and when those duties are performed. So when there's a need, be it morning or afternoon, they can kind of slide in and out of those roles. So of course, with Dr. Kohler now moving from Dodge to Engelman, we wanted to give her an opportunity to weigh in on any of her needs that she might see at Engelman, and that was her recommendation, is that this would not remove or reduce the EL support that we have at Engelman. It would just be that somebody else, through our allocation of EL staff, would provide those EL services. Mr. Hauser at Star Elementary School is recommending to use some of his title dollars for a position that would be a student success liaison position. So it is a certified position, and again, it's going to be working specifically, I believe is with students in the early years at the elementary school who need additional supports. And then you see that -2 FTE net elementary reduction. Every year we look at our elementary enrollment, rolling them forward, determining how many sections we need. And, as you look at our enrollment guidelines, as the grade levels increase, we also let those class sizes increase just a little bit. So this year we were just fortunate that as we roll that enrollment forward, there was going to be an opportunity. We have some schools that will likely need to have an additional section, but we have a few more schools that will be able to have one less section in some grade levels. So as we move staff around and adjust accordingly, we'll have a -2 FTE impact on elementary staffing. Moving on to middle school then, one of the requests at Westridge Middle School was, if you recall last year, we were able to fund a social worker for Westridge that wasn't shared with other programs. However, to do that, we had to only fund a half-time FTE for social worker. Every time we had a social worker, people realize how much they do at the schools and for the kids, and it's like, we need more, we want another one. So there was a request, of course, to increase that half-time social worker to full-time. And as we dug into that just a little bit, a lot of the work that the social workers do is in that attendance area and following up with students and families on attendance. And we felt that if we added a half-time attendance clerk rather than increase the social worker, we could provide additional supports for Westridge next year. That would be just a little bit of a more conservative approach from a financial standpoint. So that was the reason for that request. Then as we look at the academies at Grand Island Senior High School, on the classified side, they did ask for a full-time FTE, a work-based learning coordinator. This is a position that would report or work with Nikki Stoltenberg. As you know, we've really increased the numbers of internships and job shadow type opportunities for students. And once those placements are made, that doesn't just check that off and it's done. Now somebody has to communicate, follow up, coordinate, problem solve, a lot of those kinds of things. And this is a position that we really will need at the high school to continue to grow and expand those work-based learning opportunities. Requesting the addition of a full-time FTE for an assistant custodian at Grand Island Senior High School. This is in part driven by the additional square footage that we have with the renovation of Memorial Stadium. This still is, when you look at Grand Island Senior High as a whole on all the square footage that they're responsible for, this still, they're at kind of the low end of the staffing formula that we use to assign numbers of FTEs to buildings. So they've been asking for some additional support again for some time, and we have, kind of held off as long as we could. And now with Memorial Stadium, it's really time to consider that. And then on the certified, there are two FTEs for the Academy of Business and Communication. One would be a language arts, the other would be a social studies position. This is based upon the continued rollout of the academy model as we look at student requests, as we look at student being placed in the different academies. We have a need to expand 2 FTEs in that academy. We are requesting an additional music teacher. If you recall back in 2010 when we went through the what we refer to as the cliff effect, but we did have 2 vocal music instructors at the high school, and we eliminated 1 FTE. When you look at other Class A schools around the state that have a similar size and similar enrollment to Grand Island Senior High School, they all have at least 2 music teachers, and they all have at least 2 band teachers. In some cases more than that. So the vision for this position would be that they would support both music and band. So again, it's a long-awaited addition that we really feel it's time to go ahead and fund. And then Grand Island Senior High did request additional counselor and additional social worker. And as we problem solved a little bit with how to meet those needs and how to do so in a manner that might not impact the general fund as much, we were able to come up with an idea of perhaps using Gear Up dollars. And so we pulled Donna Neiman, our Gear Up project director, in. And as we visited with her about that, she had recently returned from one of the Gear Up conferences, and she had actually talked with other Gear Up program directors, and she knew that some programs had positions like that. And so she was able to do a little bit of research for us, and there's history out there with other Gear Up programs for positions called Gear Up Advisors, which support social-emotional learning for students. And so what we would be able to do is to meet the needs expressed by Grand Island Senior High for the guidance counselors and the social workers for that support through this position called a Gear Up Advisor, and it would be paid by the Gear Up grant, so that would not come out of the general fund. So we felt really fortunate to identify that opportunity. At the Success Academy, their request is to add 1 month to their secretarial schedule. They do have some summer school program there, and that summer school, that clerical support during summer school would really be advantageous, so that's very minimal cost impact to us. Special Education is requesting an additional resource teacher to meet needs at Dodge and Gates Elementary School. Requesting a social emotional learning coach for the Freshman Academy. In our Deaf and Hard of Hearing program, we have students now that are matriculating up into middle school and high school, while we still have students at the elementary level that are receiving services, so that does require the addition of another FTE. And then the occupational therapist position, we currently contract with a third party for occupational therapy services, and by hiring this position, we would discontinue that contract. So that actually will, would be a wash, or even a little bit of a cost savings, because a third party contract is always more than actually employing the person. And then additional school psychologist based upon our average daily membership and staffing guidelines by the School Psychologist Association. Of course, I might just mention with special education, I think you all know, we get reimbursed at about 50% a year in arrears. So there is initially a general fund impact, but then eventually part of that is reimbursed. So then going on to buildings and grounds, a couple of positions there. We are asking to reclassify our current warehouse coordinator into a position that will still supervise the warehouse, but will also supervise the custodial operation out in the schools. One of the things that we're finding, as everybody knows, there's really a shortage of labor and positions, and we're finding that it's been real challenging for our principals to really work closely with their custodial staff when their primary responsibility and expectation is to be in classrooms working with instruction and with students. So this position, we believe, would have a real positive impact. Not only, when you look at turnover statistics and those kinds of things, one of the things you always hear is one of the big reasons people leave is they don't understand what's expected of them, and they're frustrated because they don't know, proper communication and getting, answers to questions that they have and those kinds of things. So we see this position as being able to really have a positive impact on bringing some real structure to our custodial program, setting standards, sharing best practices from one school to another, being able to set clear communications goals, really being able to take some amount of responsibility off of our principal's shoulders for dealing with custodial issues and dealing with some of those kind of operational building maintenance types of issues that take them out of classrooms. So we have somebody on staff already that we feel would be excellent at that. It's currently the warehouse coordinator. By asking this individual to take on that custodial supervision, then that would mean we'd need to have somebody in the warehouse just as a warehouse tech that does the day-to-day filling of orders and sending stuff out and things like that. So as you can see on the executive summary, the cost of doing this would be a net zero on the general fund, because 100% of the cost would be a permanent reduction to the maintenance and operations department budget. So we were able to squeeze the juice a little bit more out of the lemon, I guess. So, Child Nutrition Center. I think it was just a year ago that we hired our registered dietitian, and at that time we took a somewhat conservative approach to that contract, because we didn't want to. It's always easier to add when we know what the productivity and what the needs are than it is to take away because maybe we went in too heavy. So we started out with a 10-month contract, but certainly we've quickly come to realize how valuable this position is. And there's just lots of things going on. Mr. Harden just reminded us that as we move into the composting program, and of course a big part of our work in the composting area will be with the Child Nutrition Center. This position will have a tremendous part of that responsibility. But just being able to be here in the summer and be part of a lot of that summer activity, summer planning that goes on. I know the individual who holds this position right now has been real active with our wellness committee and just has really contributed a lot, and we feel that this is a very wise investment. Request from information technology, and I should mention on nutrition services, that's all self-funded by the nutrition services budget, so that also would not hit the general fund. Information technology would like to have the ability to have a couple of the tech assistants at the middle school increase to 12-month contracts, so that we've got a little bit more resources in the summertime for IT to use in updating machines and getting machines rolled out for students and staff for the upcoming school year, some of those types of things. So be a small increase there. And again, this would be funded by a permanent reduction to his budget, so there'd be no additional general fund impact there. Leading for Learning, a couple of changes that to existing positions. First of all, we have several of our curriculum coordinators who have remained on 187-day contracts, and then they get some additional per diem types of pay for the extra work in the summer. but we'd like to just go ahead and convert them to 260-day contracts from the 187-day contracts that they're currently on. So that's the equivalent of a 1.86% FTE increase. Realigning some responsibilities, the Title I coordinator would become the assessment and professional learning coordinator with those Title I responsibilities, then moved over to federal programs. That, because that position is currently funded by Title I dollars, that would have to move over with the switch over to the federal program, so there would be a small amount of additional costs that would have to shift back to the general fund. Also requesting to increase the fine arts director from 0.5 to full-time, and you know, I think everybody knows what a tremendous commitment we have made to fine arts in Grand Island Public Schools, and this would be a K-12 fine arts director position. This would include you know, curriculum development, not just, you know, programs at say Grand Island Senior High School. You know, the natural question is, what does that do to Ceiling Mile? We don't have anything in the staffing plan related to Ceiling Mile. You know, the plan right now, or the expectation, is that we can look at maybe combining the halftime principal with the 0.6 learning or instructional coach position, and just combine that into one full-time principal. So we would be able to have, you know, the administrative leadership, instructional leadership at Ceiling Mile, but there would be no additional costs related to that staffing pattern at Ceiling Mile. The only cost would be by increasing the fine arts from half-time to full-time. And then we have a half of an FTE for gifted specialist, and as you recall, we made a renewed commitment to the gifted program several years ago, and you know, unfortunately, we've not been able to add staff to that program at the rate we had originally looked at, you know, over a 4 or 5 year rollout period. But you know, to maintain that commitment, we want to certainly continue to, you know, try to build that staff as we go forward. The 0.5 FTE, you know, one of the things that we learned in the professional development that we had with DMG a couple of weeks ago now is that, you know, being much more creative in how we staff, how we recruit, can open up some doors to bring people in, because, you know, maybe people, we've got folks out there who aren't yet ready to come back to work on a full-time basis, but, you know, they want to work half-time, and so, you know, we feel like we would have a good opportunity, similar to what we did with the half-time social worker, I guess, at Westridge, is we were able to find somebody who was interested in a schedule like that, and filled a position that was of great need, that oftentimes are hard to fill positions, and you know, we benefit from that. So that's the reason. So this half-time gifted specialist, in case you're wondering, would not be paired with another half-time position to be full-time, at least not right now. That's not the vision. It would be somebody strictly on a half-time basis. So. And then on the classified positions, we are asking to, or recommending to increase the family and community outreach liaison from a 9 to 12-month position. And this is a Title I funded position, so it would not impact the general fund as well. This position has really gotten involved not only in a lot of our family and stakeholder engagement, but with the community school at Lincoln. So as we look at the opportunity to maybe expand the community schools, you know, this position will be key in doing that. We have one FTE request for communication specialist from strategic partnerships and stakeholder engagement. You know, I think we all have enjoyed seeing the evolution of our communications program and marketing program, and what a great job we're doing telling the Grand Island Public Schools story, selling our brand, helping to let our community know what we're doing, the great things we're doing, building that support. And as we do that, it's like a snowball rolling down the hill. The more we do it, the more needs we identify, the more people that are saying, I need support here, I need support here, I need a brochure, I need a poster, I need, you know, social media. And so that, you know, we'd love the opportunity to add to this this program. Again, this would not have a general fund impact because of being able to fund this position with reallocation of current budgetary dollars. So. And we always talk about a staffing contingency. As hard as we work to be accurate in our forecasting of student enrollment and needs, you know, it's not uncommon for us when we actually have students show up at the beginning of a school year, to have a school or a class or a grade level that grows beyond our ability to redirect to other attendance centers, or the class sizes, we don't want them to become so large that kids don't have a good experience. So we're asking to have a couple of FTEs in our contingency plan just to react to those future needs that are currently unknown or not identified. So kind of a summary of as you looked at the executive summary, you saw all of the different general fund, other fund sorts of things. So here's a summary. I won't go through each line specifically, but you can see then as we get to the bottom of that, we are talking about a general fund impact of $363,875. I've been with the district for a little over 2 years, and I think that 21 years. So I think this is the smallest staffing request that we've ever brought as far as general fund impact, which I guess just reinforces, the message that we're being conservative. We've been creative in trying to find other funding sources and meeting just those most important needs. So about $926,000 is from other sources. Some of those are department reallocations. Some of those are title dollars, other types of federal types of programs. So total would be $1,289,900,000. If you add the contingency FTEs in there, it's just a little over 1.4. So as far as how the FTEs break down, you can see there from a certified standpoint, about 4.52 FTEs. The vast majority of those are positions that are very close to the classroom. So I know it's always important that our community understands that we're not just hiring more administrators with the dollars that you approve. These are positions that are going to be having day-to-day and direct impact with our students. And then they classified about 10 classified FTEs. So at the very end of the executive summary, you'll see the fiscal opinion that Mr. Harden has provided. So you understand his support of this recommendation. So with that, I'd answer any questions that you have.
Any questions that anybody has? Mrs. Schutz.
Just remind me, the gifted specialist, is that district-wide or is that at a specific school? I forget how we do those.
The implementation plan is starting out with the elementary, so we continue to add these positions at the elementary level right now.
But they rotate between different schools, or are they at a specific site?
The current have multiple sites that they're responsible for.
And then my other question is, as far as the academies go, for the specialty courses and those kind of things, we're pretty well staffed. We have everything we need.
Right now we do.
Dan nodding, so thank you.
Any other questions? I have just a couple. So the Early Learning Center, the one with that's dependent upon the childhood expansion, that's what would be at Howard? Is that right, or is that something else?
Last year, I know when they applied for it and didn't get it, the classrooms are going to be at Howard. I don't know if they've actually,
It would be, okay. And then on the, just a minute, where was it? I had a question. Oh, in the special education, the occupational therapist and the school psychologist, do they then go to all schools, or is that for a specific school that those positions are for?
The school psychologist positions, they have a formula based upon student needs at each building. Okay. So every school gets a certain portion of an FTE. The largest schools do have maybe multiple FTEs. Okay. And then the occupational therapist would be based upon, usually that's like an IEP driven, certain students, are receiving occupational therapy. So just wherever that need is based upon those individual students.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for being creative, you and Mr. Harden. We appreciate that. All right, 6.10 is the City of Grand Island Public Utility Easement.
Thanks, Mrs. Hinkle. I'll pop this up here. This is part of the Old Potash kind of reconstruction plan the city's doing. And so we've got just a little slice on our very northwest corner of our property that is going to open up for an easement for the utilities for that project. They'll encroach onto our corner there a little bit. You know, it's a very large project, and they're going to get started here, potentially here this summer, and it'll be about a good 2 years worth of disruption of old potash. But when they're done, it'll be awesome. So this is our piece, so I'm just bringing this for information, and I'll answer any questions you have.
These always get a lot of questions, so I'll
Oh,
wait a
man,
moment
yeah,
as
it's very
people
complicated.
formulate them. No, okay,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Conclude.
So then 6.11 is the facilities and master plan, Mr. Petch and Mr. Harden.
In case they have questions. Well, you know, I'm not sure that we'll be able to have this meeting because there'll be more than 10 in attendance, but the intent was to, on Tuesday, April 14th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. out at College Park at the UNL meeting rooms, to have a town hall meeting concerning facilities master planning. Of course, that is directly in our strategic plan. So even if that needs to be postponed or rescheduled, whatever we want to call it, we do still need to move forward with, I guess I would call it empowering documents. So you, as the board, would approve next month, so it's just information this month, the two documents that you see there. And so I guess I want to remind you that the history it goes that in 2003, the board did a facility study, for lack of a better term, and they actually called it infrastructure study. I do have one remaining copy of that, and I think Mr. Brown might have one too, so we're hunting for that. Hopefully we do. And so the interesting thing is when you look at that document, if you want to, it's in my office, the vast majority of those recommendations ended up being done in the 17 years from 2013 to today, I guess, for lack of a better term. Did we build a new second high school? No, but did we address the high school? Absolutely, with the academies. So the important thing is that we don't want to wait 17 years. We want to have a robust, thoughtful dialogue with our community about our facility needs. So, you know, we have 2 million plus square feet of space, and we have $350 million invested in that space as far as the value of that. So there's a large amount of resources involved. So we want to be very judicious and thoughtful about how we spend those monies if and when the time comes to do that. So we want to be in front of that. So these two documents, the first one I'll direct you to is the, I guess, Planning Steering Committee. So the idea is that the board basically approves bylaws and an outline of a committee and how it would look. We did have a 30-member committee back in 2003. Sounds like a lot of people, but when you think about it, the way we have it structured now is 6 members with 5 subcommittees. That whole subcommittee structure then becomes the full 30-member committee. And so each committee is chaired by a volunteer and sub-chaired by a community volunteer, and then there's a cabinet board member, building administrator, and so of course it's preschool, elementary, middle school, high school. Then we have the, I believe, ubiquitous category of other, maybe Kneale administration building other needs. And then we obviously have consultants, so Cannon Moss Berger and Associates are engineers. Maybe we'd have regional planning folks involved, different folks from the city, county. So we want to include everybody we can think of if necessary. And then really Dr. Grover and a lot of other folks listed there as additional kind of ad hoc support personnel to that process. So that makeup of folks, including the unknowns, there's no names on there, there's just, you know, titles and positions and things like that. The idea is that we would fill that in as we go, certainly ask for community volunteers during the town hall meeting. And then the bylaws then are the other thing I want to point out to you. And so we didn't create these. We copied them and nudged them and reworded them and kind of congealed them into what's right for GIPS. So we were able to find a resource book. A gentleman that's been doing this facilities master planning for schools for 30 years wrote a book. And prior to that, there was almost nothing in the literature that would help us kind of identify this process. So this kind of concept where it literally says, here's how we're going to behave, here's how we're going to act, here's who gets a vote. All of this is listed out in this document. And so the good news is, you know, we're just doing information today. So if there's something here you don't like or you want to change or we want to need to further modify, one of the important things about this whole process is this is community input. You, the Board of Education, always makes the decisions through a board motion, action, approval or not approval of the motion. So end of the day, it's a mechanism for us to engage our community, have a good open quality dialogue about wants and needs. Number one comment I'll say is it's not about the next bond issue. It's about what do we want our facilities to look like, what's important to us, and let's do that before we ever talk about money. So when we do talk about money, we're talking about the things that matter. So I think it's a great process. We've worked really hard with Canon Mossberger and maybe even Mr. Patch with the efforts to develop boards for every single facility. So believe it or not, I think we've up to like 35 boards. So we will, the idea is on this town hall meeting, wherever it occurs, we will have each one of those boards around and people can come in and kind of do a walkthrough. They can have some time with you as board members sitting down at a table having one-on-one discussions about what's important. And after about the first hour takes place, towards the last 30 minutes, they would have the benefit of being able to go through and maybe use some stickers to identify projects that they think either they or someone else in the community has suggested and that they like and want the committee to further study. Quite honestly, the committee will probably look at everything that's suggested, so there's due diligence on all the recommendations. Obviously, it's a filtering process between the continuum of need, want, and ability to do. So, any other thumbs up for Mr. Patch? I'll conclude my comments.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I know it's taken a lot of time and work, so thank you for doing that, and I hope we get to have it soon.
I do too, and there's a lot of really good information. I learned some things, so, you know, there's
Yeah.
always something new to learn, right?
Good,
So.
yep. Then all is not lost. Okay, 6.12 is the construction update, Mr. Petch.
Thanks again, Mrs. Hinkle. Stadium's still pushing forward. Finishes are starting to come into play a lot more now. We started floors, and one kind of cool thing is we're using epoxy, and so with epoxy it gives us some latitude for colors, and so we can get some purple color into our floors and locker rooms, restrooms. That said, we're still got a ways to go to get to our May completion is what we're really pushing for on the west side. East side, again, still slated for August, mid-August. They've got the floors all poured, so they're starting block walls, and so making decent progress. Obviously, there's a situation we've been continually talking about here throughout the meeting that could derail us a little bit. We'll just keep our fingers crossed. I have not heard of anything in the respect of contractors not being able to work, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens as we move forward. So I'll kind of close there and answer any questions you might have.
Good point. Anybody have any questions? No? All right, thank you very much. So now we will move on to 6.13, our superintendent report, Dr. Grover.
Thank you, Madam President. just sitting here listening to all of our team members planning for the future as we are in the middle. We used to do flip the classroom, but I think now we're flipping the schoolhouse, turning to a virtual environment. And so, of course, you know, my report tonight will center on the COVID-19 update. One of the things that we want to really think about what this closure means for us in Grand Island Public Schools. Most times when we close school, we are simply waiting for the snow to blow over or the ice to unthaw or the wind to slow down. But combating the COVID-19 is something where we are going to have to play a major role in helping to mitigate or to slow down the spread of the virus. And so that's exactly what the school closure is designed to do, is to help slow the spread of the COVID-19 across our communities. Our schools have very dense populations, and we know that our students can help us prevent the spreading of the virus. During this closure, I do want to remind everyone that all of our student activities are canceled until further notice. And as Mrs. Hinkle mentioned earlier, we do recognize that the kids' school year is different, and many activities and events that they look forward to may be altered or not experienced at all. Here's what we commit to in Grand Island Public Schools. We commit to being creative, as you've asked, and innovative in trying to figure out ways to still make very traditional moments special for our students, to honor and preserve those moments for those students and their families. We would love to hear ideas from our students. We're trying to figure out ways of how we can engage with our students. I think we'd like to start with Madison, our school board representative, who is not here tonight, but maybe we could jump on the phone with her to help us think about what types of things are they thinking about and begin to give us some ways to think about their future. We are working on the rollout of our online learning system. Some people probably are working on it right now as they're sitting in the boardroom. But we've made a lot of great progress. Our first step is just trying to make sure that we can get our devices into the hands of our students. We will have information up on our website later this week that will give instructions to our parents about how they can receive those devices. If I think about it, I believe our students all the way from grades 1 through 12 will have some type of digital experience. We will work with our pre-K and K students to make sure they have packets of learning materials at hand also. We know that many of our students, they rely on Grand Island Public Schools for their meals. So our district, and I want to say just amazing thanks to Chris Spellman and her team, and everyone working in that process. They were actually able to get our meal sites established. They will open tomorrow. We have 7 sites across our school district. Any student can come and receive meals. They do not have to qualify for free or reduced lunch. They do not have to complete any paperwork. They can just show up and we will ensure that they are fed. Again, we just want to stress, as it relates to our students, we recognize that our schools are safe havens and they provide many services, love and support, along with their academic education. And we will continue to make sure we're keeping up with every service that we can provide. We're thinking about the mental health side of this issue and how we can even make makeshift opportunities to continue to provide support in that area. We will be looking how we can use telehealth along the way to think about those students. And we know the more that they're away from school, and if they are in a situation where they are quarantined or just isolated, that's something for us to think about, how to continue to keep those students engaged. And that is on our list as well. Now maybe turn our focus a little bit to our staff, just to give you an update with our staff. Staff is critical during these unprecedented times. They're superheroes every day, and during these times, we know that they're going to be able to show us new superpowers that maybe they didn't even know they had yet. We do expect for our teachers to be engaged, and you know, I've spoken with other school districts who've gone through closures, like through with the floods or the hurricanes. And that's one of the things that we want to keep in mind is that continuous engagement opportunities so that people don't disconnect from us throughout this process. So our staff, they will still be working from home. Different staff members will have different expectations, especially more people involved right now, maybe in different ways, but as we continue to roll our plan out. So it's just different points of interactions, but they are expected to be engaged throughout the closure and whenever we return. So thinking about our parents as well, we're asking our parents to work with us in ways like never before. So you think about working with their students to keep up with their academic experiences and just being home with them. And so we really want to thank our parents for the role that they are now playing alongside us in ensuring that their academic experiences and their health and wellness is also taken care of. And we're also asking for our parents to pay close attention to communication. It changes daily. I can't stress that enough. Making sure that you're connected, making sure that your information is updated, that you can receive the phone calls, the emails, the social media posts, and you can always check our website for updates. Our community, we know that here in the city of Grand Island, they always answer the call to action. That's one of the things I love about our community. We were on a phone call today that was organized by the United Way with several different people from all over the community, just looking to coordinate efforts to be able to support our students as well as our community members. A lot of the people that would normally serve food are some of our older populations. And so we're going to have to think about things differently. And so we'd love to continue to receive different ideas about how we get services to folks. We continue to collaborate with our other school districts here and across the Tri-Cities. Our community is strong, and we know that during these times that it's going to require extensive collaboration, and we will play a role maybe in a different way also. If we think about, we have a lot of different staff members that they are still being paid, they're still ready to serve, they're stepping up to do whatever it takes. And so you may see some of our staff members out with some of the community efforts as well. In a way that we can help the entire community, we're willing to do that. Also want to thank our board for your support. Later tonight, you will adopt official measures to support the alternative delivery of educational services, as well as continuing employment and paid leave. And that just goes a long way, that during this time of crisis, our staff members do not have to worry about their compensation, their benefits, and that's because of the leadership of our board. And for us, it doesn't take, passing an official resolution because you are a board that always put our kids first, and you take care of the folks that's taking care of our kids. And so I think more than anything, the resolution just serve as a way for you to put your signature, your stamp on it. But certainly, you always do what's right. And so we're so thankful for your leadership. I also want to thank the board for your information and your contacts, your connections to the medical community allowed me to get information that I needed. You keeping up with all of the changes and all of the news releases and all the text messages because it's kind of hard to keep up with all the information or know exactly where to go to get information as rapidly as things are changing. So every time you send me something, it just helps to keep us informed, and just your translation services as well. And so we have a very active board here that's engaged. You may not see them, but they are definitely working behind the scenes and certainly part of the team that's helping to keep our students supported. So in summary, I just want to, again, express my thanks to all of our team members here in Grand Island Public Schools. We always said that we were better together. And when we are well and when we're healthy, we're stronger. And so as we move forward, we will be better and stronger together. Thank you. That concludes my report for tonight.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have questions for Dr. Grover?
Lots of praise.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to the action items, and the first ones are the motions. And as Dr. Grover said, we would do this anyway, but we just want to make it public and reassuring for everyone. So the first one is 7.1, the paid leave authority. Mr. Selk, do you want to come up in case there's questions, or? The rationale is there, as well as the motion. Does anybody have any questions on this that they want to ask before we go ahead with the motion? Somebody want to make the motion? Okay, Dr. Brose.
Does the entire motion as written need to be read, all part A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3? I'm willing to do it, I just.
Does not have to be read into the record, so if
Okay.
there's any changes you want to make.
No, got it. Yeah, I'll add that. All right. I move that the Board of Education hereby authorize the superintendent of schools or designee to grant a paid leave of absence for up to 14 calendar days or more days as necessary with full current wages and benefits to exempt and non-exempt employees who are experiencing the following conditions or circumstances related to the COVID-19 virus. 1, have traveled from China, South Korea, Japan, Italy, Iran, or other destinations as identified by the CDC within the last 14 days, or lives or has close contact with someone who has been in these countries. 2, has been asked to self-quarantine by any health care provider or public official. 3, has been diagnosed with or has had contact with anyone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19 virus. Number 4, is presently exhibiting the symptoms of an infectious respiratory illness, which include fever, cough, or shortness of breath. And or 5, has to leave their job duties to take care of a family member who has coronavirus, all subject to any required adjustments hereto required to comply with any state or federal law now existing or subsequently enacted.
Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Brown. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. 7.2 is the COVID-19 large gatherings of people. I don't know if anybody needs to come up, or does anybody have any questions on it based on what we heard earlier? No? Okay, so then would someone like to make the motion? Mr. Brown.
I would move that the Board of Education should and does hereby authorize the superintendent of schools or designee to take all necessary actions to work with the state and local health department officials for advice and direction on functions that may involve large gatherings of people.
And is there a second? Second, Dr. Brose. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Okay, 7.3 is the COVID-19 Nebraska Emergency Management Act from Nebraska Revised Statute 81821.36 through 81-829.75. Does anybody have any questions about this one? Okay, would someone like to make a motion? Mrs. Schutz.
I'll take this one. I would move that the Board of Education should and does hereby authorize the superintendent of schools or designee to take all necessary action to prepare for the Board of Education to declare the COVID-19 virus situation as an emergency under the Nebraska Emergency Management Act, Nebraska Revised Statute 81-829.36 through 81-829.75, including preparation of any required resolution determining that an emergency exists and preparation for filing such resolution with the clerk of local governments and the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency.
And is there a second? Second, Mrs. Albers. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right. And then the last one is COVID-19 closure or alternative delivery of education services and staff continued employment. Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Albers?
This is a doozy. The recommendation that the Board of Education should and does hereby authorize the superintendent of schools to monitor the COVID-19 virus conditions in the state of Nebraska in the Educational Services Unit number 10 area. And based upon the directives of the Commissioner of Education and the community spread of the disease in Grand Island, Nebraska area, 1, close the Grand Island Public Schools and suspend delivery of educational services, both regular education and special education. The U.S. Department of Education has ruled that is schools that are closed, sped services are not required, while continuing to maintain critical programs that support the health and well-being of certain student populations, meal programs. Number 2, close the Grand Island Public Schools buildings to student attendance and continued delivery of educational service, including special education services, and or the development and planning of alternative educational services for this and the ensuing school years, and assign administrative, instructional, and support staff to carry out such duties in person or remotely. 3, employment and assign certificated and non-certificated staff as needed and in a manner that provides for such employees continued service in the school district. And 4, manage access to building and manage and extracurricular activity programs.
All right, is there a second? Second, Ms. Wolf. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. So the next agenda item is the Memorial Stadium naming rights that Mrs. Scoreboard presented earlier tonight. Does anybody have any questions on those? Okay, if not, would someone like to make the recommendation? Ms. Wolf?
Turn my mic on, that would be really helpful. I recommend that the board approve the Memorial Stadium naming rights as presented.
And is there a second? Second, Mrs. Inc. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right. And then the 7.6 is the Memorial Stadium display and scoreboard. This one, Mrs. Worthington and Mr. Harden, do you have anything you want to share with us before we?
Very quickly, this is an enabling if and when we sell all the ads, so I'll let Mrs. Worthington talk about that.
Okay.
Well, what a lead-in. I was really hoping if and when would be tonight. Mrs. Wells and I and several other people were really moving forward with this quickly, and then something slowed us down just a bit, but we still are in very, very good shape. You may remember that we have 4 anchor partnership packages. Those are $10,000 each for 5 years, and those are all filled. We have 6 founding partner packages. Those are $5,000 a year for 5 years, and those are all filled. We have 6 premier partnership packages, which are $2,500 a year for 5 years, and we have 1 of the 6 filled. We've had at least 3 other meetings. 2 or 3 we're pretty sure we're right there, and so I feel like we have more than enough contacts to fill those. We just really wanted it to be done by tonight. We do know, we've worked with the company a little bit, and if we can get those finished by March 31st, they still can get the scoreboard in on time for that August opening. They even gave us a little bit more than that, but we're going to try to ignore that and definitely be done March 31st.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for that. That's amazing. Anybody have any questions for either one of them? All right, does someone like to make the motion? Mrs. Inc., I see you going for it.
The recommendation to approve the purchase and financing of the new Memorial Stadium display and scoreboard as presented, subject to all the advertising agreements being fully executed prior to placing the purchase order with the vendor.
And is there a second? Second, Dr. Bros, any discussions? All right, please vote.
Motion passes.
All right, 7.7 we heard about earlier tonight as well. The lease agreement with Trigo, is it Trigo or Trago?
Trigo.
Trago Dugan Aviation. Any additional questions for Mr. Phillips?
One additional point on that, this is an annual agreement. They go by calendar year, so this will cover us through the end of the year 2020, and then I'll be back in November and December to get 20 and 21 set up.
Okay, good. All right, does someone want to make the motion? Mr. Brown?
I would move to approve the Trago Dugan Aviation lease agreement as presented.
And is there a second? I think I heard Mr. Barsones. It's hard to tell. There's an echo. But any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, 7.8 is the request for proposal GIPS roofing project. I believe we heard about this last month. Mr. Petch, anything new?
A little bit, yeah, no, this is the bid. What I talked previous was on the project list, and these are a couple of our roof projects that are at the
that's what it
top
was,
of the project list. And so, with an estimate of $1.1 million, actually pretty good news here, but a little different because we've got 3 different roof areas that are part of this project. And this is a very large project, and we had the 2 roofers come and say, we're not sure we can get this all done this summer, if we are the only one that can do it. So we are going to allow some flexibility, and we're going to split it between the 2. And so not necessarily the Zimba folks, we're going to recommend that they do the 100 and 300 wing for a total of $404,850. And then we're going to recommend to have the Tri-City Group folks do the 200 wing, which is a pretty large piece as well. And they were at, $384,996. So add those up, and we're still under our estimate. Does set us up because we absolutely have to be able to get the project started and completed before school starts in August this next year. So again, that's a little different than what we usually do, but very confident. If you would ask me which one of these guys, or would you recommend both? They're the top 2 in the area, and as far as I'm concerned, in the state. And so pretty comfortable recommending to go this route. So with that, I'll conclude, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
I motion to approve the Gish roofing project as presented.
And is there a second? Second, who said that? Mrs. Albers, okay. Mrs. Albers, any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right. So 7.9 is the Lincoln roofing project.
So you guys can fight over this one if you want to. So again, good news in the respect where our estimate is at $150,000. Opened up proposals with the same 2 roofers, by the way. The third one did not give us a bid. Recommending to award this one to Zimba Roofing for the $123,884. Just an FYI, our other roofer was basically $2,000 more was all. So pretty competitive pricing. I think that when I look back on the pricing on the high school, I know that one of them did have a little bit of overtime figured in so they could accomplish that task. Again, I spoke with both of the companies. There are no problems. They are very confident they can accomplish both roof projects on time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Barsones.
Recommend the approval of the Lincoln roofing project as presented.
And is there a second? Second, Mrs. Albers. Any discussion? Please vote. It's hard enough when we're all
Motion
sitting
passes.
close together, but it's really hard tonight, so.
Thank you.
All right. 7.10 is the modify 403B plan. Mr. Harden.
And this item was from a couple months ago. We just didn't get it on the agenda last month, so I apologize. But just as a reminder, this is a cleanup measure. We had two plans. September 1, we went on to a new plan. And prior to that time, we had adopted a special pay plan for early retirement incentive, just in case. We never used it from the time we adopted it. You can't just close those down by IRS rules, so we can't just deactivate the one. We have to merge the two together. And so in consultation with our attorneys on the 403B plan, what's in front of you is to approve a plan amendment that does that, merges those two. So that tool in the toolbox, so to speak, if and when the time comes, is still there. It's just already within our plan that we currently have with this motion.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Barsonas.
I recommend the approval of the modified 403B plan as presented.
All right, and is there a second? Second. I think I heard Mr. Brown. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right. 7.11 is the Tyler Technologies Payment Services Agreement. Mr. Harden.
Shouldn't have sat down. All right. And so this, again, is an item that we brought forth from January. The idea here is that we're modifying the way we pay bills and making it so we're out of the check writing business with all the fraud and everything. This would allow us to work with our software vendor to utilize their solution to convert our payments from a paper-only check issuing kind of thing or wire transfer. That's the only two methods we use now. To where we can do wire, we can do an ACH, we can do a business e-check, or an actual prepaid Visa. And so it won't happen instantly, like tomorrow. We don't just turn and flip a switch and have this work. It'll be a process that we'll do over the rest of the fiscal year to get it going. So that's the intent. This is basically their agreement that they need to have approved. We had it run through legal review, so it's all good with that process, I guess is the way to say it.
Okay, any questions anybody have? Ms. Wolf.
I move to approve the Tyler Technology Payment Services Agreement as presented.
And is there a second? Second, Mrs. Inc. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right. 7.12 is the capital planning and software. Mr. Harden.
And we presented this to you, I believe, last month. This will allow us, again, as part of our strategic plan with facilities. We need to get away from trying to manage all those projects and all the moving parts of all those 2 million square feet and what it takes to run those from a spreadsheet to an actual database system that lets us see in real time all the information we need to make informed business decisions on where we need to spend our money to get the most for it. And be able to track it is really kind of the biggest issue. Not only the capital investments that we do on a routine basis every year, but then just documenting the maintenance, preventative maintenance especially, on those items so we can easily track the work that needs to be done and justify our work. So this allows us to utilize the software from a company called the Marisco, and it is going to be an allocation, kind of overhead type item for all the projects that we do, so it won't be additional budget. We'll absorb it within the resources that we have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Brown.
I would move to approve the capital planning and software plan as presented.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second, Dr. Bros. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. We will move on to committee reports. The first one is Facility and Finance Committee. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I'll be reporting from minutes from March 3rd. We looked at proposals, a lot of other items that were already discussed previously this evening. With that, I conclude my report. Next meeting is Tuesday, March 31st at 7:30.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Way to set the example. 8 per 8.2 is the Leading for Learning Committee report. Mr. Barsonis.
I'm supposed to beat that. How? So we had a meeting, we met March 3rd. Mr. Phillips provided more information on the update on the expanded dual enrollment AP courses that can be offered, as well as information on the GISH Virtual Academy courses, which virtual sounds very good right now. And there will be just more information on how that's going to be implemented. And again, this is used in the effort to helping our students meet their academic requirements. We also heard about the math adoption, and that went to finance and facilities as well. Dr. Palmer also informed us about the Gear Up purchase for the KG hotspots, and we'll be purchasing some of those as a survey at BAR for 7th and 8th graders showed that there were several students that did not have access to the internet. And again, with everything going on, we see a lot of that happening in our community. Continue to do an update with MAPS results. We heard a little bit more about that. The other three items you have heard about. DONE courses for English as a second language endorsements will be, it's something that we're working on, and we're going to have our own Amanda Levos teaching some of those courses as well. And summer school name change. The middle school summer school program is recommending to change the title to Summer Academy to align with the GISH academies as well. And we will be hearing more in our next month's meeting. With that, I conclude our report.
Thank you very much. Personnel Committee 8.3, Ms. Wolf.
On the staffing study update with DMG, the week of schedule sharing with SEL staff was completed on February 28th, and that information is being analyzed. I would have to double check with Mr. Stelk if the conference call happened today or not. It did not. All right. Employee Assistance Program contract renewal. Our contract with Wholeness Healing to run with our EAP is up for renewal September 2020. We're looking at utilizing potentially some other resources, looking at contract rates to manage to increase relation to the benefits provided. I would also need to double check with Mr. Stelk in regards to certified renewal contracts. They have been distributed, but I'm not sure if the March 18th deadline still is happening. Okay, perfect. Along with the staffing update, certified staffing, the district has received 34 notices of retirements and resignations and has filled 19 certified vacancies for next year. Classified staffing, human resources recruiting to fill the following classified vacancies: custodian, summer yard workers, paras, technology assistant, and nutritional service assistants. In administrative staffing, the Engelman principal now is Dr. Kohler, who came from Dodge. We are screening interviews for the Dodge principal and Gates principals. The Gear Up director, screening interviews have been completed, and I'm not sure when the final interviews will be completed. Teammates director will be posted hopefully this week. Executive director, curriculum instruction and professional learning. Final interviews hopefully scheduled for this week. Curriculum coordinator in science, applications are being accepted. And executive assistant to the superintendent, applications are being accepted and screening interviews are being scheduled. And we will greatly miss you, Mrs. Sir. Staff adjustments were reviewed and accepted as presented, and we hope to meet April 2nd.
Okay, thank
I
you.
conclude my report.
The Policy Committee did not meet, I believe, right? Okay. Public Relations and Partnership Development Committee, we have not met yet. We're maybe going to meet Friday. I'm sure that'll be determined. Okay. The Governance Committee has not met either. We'll be making some changes there. The Grand Island Public Schools Foundation report, Mrs. Albers, anything to report? No, we're meeting Wednesday. Okay. Oh, okay, interesting. 8.8 is the GNSA Legislative Committee, Mr. Harden. I'm sorry, Kelly, I looked right at you and wanted you to start talking.
Well, due to COVID-19, the legislature is shut down, the GNSA is shut down, no meetings planned.
And that's a good thing.
That's where we're at. So everything's shut down because of the crisis, and so more to report when the time comes.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing the letter from the State Farmers Union.
Yeah, no, it was a very good letter, and, you know, there continues to be a lot of pushback about the situation with property tax relief. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 crisis has kind of brought home the need for strong financial reserves in times of crises, because they do happen.
Yes, they do.
Kind of a
Thank you very much.
self-fulfilling plug there.
The NASB monthly update is attached. You can take a look at that if you haven't already. Not a lot to share there. And I think I did already share this, but of course, the national conference that Eric and I were going to go to was canceled for later, well, beginning of April, so, yep. There are some trainings coming up, and one of them looks really interesting. It's about brain, how the brain works or something. I know right now that the one that's closest to us is scheduled on the same night as our board retreat, but there are some other locations. If anybody's interested, you can look at that. All right. Number 9 is an executive session for the purpose of negotiations, because it is in the best interest of the public to discuss these matters in closed session. Do I have a motion?
I move the board convene to executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations.
And is there a second? Please vote. Before everybody moves, oh, go ahead and vote, sorry.
Motion
That's fine, take your time. So when you're ready, just give me a nod and then I'll get going. We did that so fast that she's not quite ready for us, so. Correct, yes. So we're gonna start with number 10, which is the reconvening from executive session, so I need a motion for that.
I move the board reconvene from executive session.
And is there a second, Mr. Brown? Any discussion? So we're voting on number 10, and whenever you're ready. Thank you. All right. Item number 11, we do have action deemed necessary, and so Mrs. Inc. is going to read the recommendation for us.
I move to approve the 2020-2021 master contract with the Grand Island Education Association with a projected cost of tentative agreement of 3.31%.
Is there a second? Mr. Brown, second. Any discussion? Please vote. I'm so glad we got that done before this all hit. All right, so notification of upcoming board meetings. Our next one is April, probably the 19th, is that? And then I think it's April 6th, April 9th, yes, sorry. And then I think with regards to committee meetings and stuff, for a while, it might be as needed, is that correct?
The as needed and virtual.
Okay. 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 So-
And I just only say as needed, it just kind of depends on like where we are with being prepared for everything. So if we have to prioritize some work, you know, over the committee meetings, and if we don't have anything urgent to update you on, but we would definitely keep you posted.
You need to turn your microphone on, sorry. That's okay.
So in regards to our committee meetings, they will be as needed and performed virtually until further notice. So we will conduct the committee meetings if we have something that's new or urgent that we need to talk about. And I ask your maybe flexibility in that area. Just kind of depends on where the staff is after we try to get into this virtual learning space and where we may need people to prioritize their time to get the services out to our students.
Most
Okay,
definitely.
thank you.
And then the board retreat, we'll still plan for it. Right now, it's April 30th, May 1, but of course, we may not get to have that either. So, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.